Bohemian Rhapsody. Today what I wanted to do was just use some elements that could be found at the dollar store or the thrift store. I love the natural look of both burlap and lace, and they make a wonderful combination when you put the two together. You can just create some really beautiful looks that are quite simple to pull together using just really simple elements. All of these materials, other than the flowers, I did pick up these flowers at Michael's, and they actually came in a set of 3, and what I love about them is that they're actually paper flowers, so the texture of them is beautiful and goes quite nicely with the burlap and lace look. Sometimes I find if you try to bring in a flower and it's made out of more of a silky material, an artificial flower that's silk or just some of the shinier elements, they just don't lend themselves as well to kind of the flat matte look of like I say that I'm going for with the burlap and the lace. So these were purchased at Michael's, a set of 3, and of course I buy everything 50% off. I think they were just $1. You would just stick them on either with hot glue or you could just use a double-sided tape. Of course I love circles. I use concentric circles and layering effect in a lot of my gift wrapping ideas. Circles are so versatile. Whenever I see circles that are in different textures, I often will pick those up. I have a whole combination of things that have this burlap look. I have this thicker ribbon here that I just picked up. This one here actually has a sticky back on it, and I picked this roll up at the dollar store as well. Then I also just have some kind of twine that was picked up there. These doilies are a combination of paper ones, so I've got kind of 2 paper ones here which are beautiful in themselves, but these ones I actually picked up at a thrift store and they were just 25 cents each. I think they make a beautiful addition to different kinds of gifts as well, depending, like I say, you just kind of want to be conscious. Not that I don't mind putting different elements together like shiny with doll and so on, but sometimes a doily won't, it'll just make it look tacky. So you really do have to be kind of careful when you use them if you're trying to create a really beautiful kind of more of a maybe a Victorian look. So I'm just going to show you some ideas today of how you might use these elements to combine in lots of different ways, and just using basically the same things over and over again. One idea would be just to kind of have a base burlap ribbon, and then you can just see how some of the larger ones would actually overlap. So what you might do is take your base ribbon and then you might add in an actual piece of lace over top, and so what it would in essence do is it would sit sitting over top of the burlap to create a layered and show the contrast between the lace and the burlap. So that would be one idea. You could also take a smaller doily and put it on top, and then you could just use something like your twine to tie that in the center to tie your doily on. You can layer it up with a bigger doily. So this one's a paper one, and I could put it over top. And then what I might want to do is actually add a burlap circle to the top of that. And then again, I could use my twine to tie that on top, or I could use my lace. I prefer not to tie the lace. You could, but I probably, if I'm using lace, would be more apt to tie it or secure it on the bottom and just leave it kind of flat across the top. But you can see then how you could incorporate in your little paper flower, and when you bring that all together, you've got this lovely combination of white and burlap and the lace, and just it's all very flat and very very kind of that paper natural look. And I of course love it with just the plain butcher kind of brown paper. Some other ideas would be to take more than one doily. So you could take a paper doily, or pardon me, a fabric doily and a paper doily, and you could layer those up. You could even add an element of your burlap in there. You could actually do the opposite. So you could put in a layer of burlap and then you could put in your doily, and it's sitting so you kind of get the color from the back of it. And again, using different combinations of tying on. Next, I'm going to take this off. So another look that you could go for is just putting on your doily, adding, like I say, a circle, and then just using a really simple twine to tie it off. You can always straighten everything out after. If you put it on tight, you want to get it nice and tight, because because it will always loosen when you make that final tie on it. Get it the size you want, and then you can always work to kind of center it up and flatten that out. I'm actually not liking the burlap with this one. I might actually just go straight to the little flower in the center. And again, you would have to, when you glue it, just watch that knot and how you're gluing it to center it off. But again, just very simple and pretty. What I like to do sometimes with the ends of something like twine like this, because it doesn't have a lot of structure to it, it just sits kind of flat, I'll often just take the twine, or if I use wool or another kind of string, and I'll just really untwist those cords. So I just kind of pulled those apart. So then what you could do from there is just take your flower and you could put it on. It covers up that, but it just gives a little bit of interest around the outside edges of it. So, and then again, it's just easy to change that up just by changing your doily. The size of your doily, what you're putting in, it changes how that looks. And even with reference to your little flower, you can see how different doilies give it a completely different look. But what I love is the fact that you can actually just layer it up and try different things. So I'm going to create a couple of different finished looks, but I did just want you to get an idea of how you can play with these and just create so many different looks, really with just the same elements. So this is just a really wide, almost like a burlap ribbon. And so in this case, what I'm going to do is just put it under. I've actually pre-cut the size already. And all I'm going to do is knot this just so it's secure. And then I'm just going to show you another idea for instead of a bow. And again, we can put the doily in there as well. I just wanted to tie this first without wrecking the doily. So I'm just pulling it as tight as I really can, because as you get closer, making your knot, it can be really difficult to get it nice and tight. So what I did in this case was I just took the edges and just trim down the edge, because it's actually kind of a finished edge on there. And so the technique that I'm going to show you won't work if you leave that finished edge, because that edge is there actually to prevent fraying. And in fact, what we are going to do is purposely fray this. So I think that one will be cut. So all you would do is take your burlap, and then you would begin to, as soon as you get those edges, which is kind of holding it together, you just kind of pull those strings apart and just undo the edges. And what you can do is, instead of really creating a bow, this is just the tied ends. You can go as far as you want. You can kind of play with it, look at it, and see if you want to go further. But I love the idea of it just being kind of random and messy, and just how those ends just kind of stick out. And like I say, you can go lower, you can go higher, you can bend it down. It looks a bit more like a bow that way, but you can really play with it just by taking out those extra pieces. You could always, if you wanted to, you could still add one of those flowers to sit on the gift, or just leave it as is. And again, you could easily just take your doily and slide it under. If I was off camera, I probably could do the same with one of the bigger doilies and put it under. It's just kind of hard for me to get the angle. But again, I love just the randomness of the burlap, and because it's so wide, you get quite a bit of play with it. And just adding that little doily underneath just creates a little bit more interest. Another thing you can do is take your twine. I'm just going to slide this back on because I know what it is. But you could slide this back on, and what you could do is take a doily. It would obviously have to be a fabric one. This would not work with a paper one. But what you can actually do is gather it through the middle and tie it off. Now you might want to use white for this as well. I just have this twine handy, so I thought I would use the twine. But you can actually make your doily into your little bow. And if you wanted to create more interest underneath, again, there's no reason why you couldn't add another layer in there. You could add one of those burlap circles underneath. But again, you could actually use your doily just as your bow, just by gathering it in the center. So I just wanted to show you how this might come together if I take it to kind of a finished look. Lots of times I find the fun is playing with it and coming up with as many different ideas as you can. So I've just got my kind of sticky-sided burlap there. I'm going to take this piece of lace. In this case, I'm just going to tie am going to tie it on the top, but I'm not going to worry about it being a bow or decorative in any way. I'm just really going to tie it off. But I do want to add some of those elements to the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my doily on. I'm going to add on one of those burlap pieces, which I think ties nice to the burlap ribbon I have going down the side. I'm going to layer my lace on top and give this a tie. You can always just trim those to size. And then you can see how I could just take my little flower and attach it to the middle, and just how beautiful that looks, just sitting as is. The other thing you could do is, I'm just going to show you the difference when I don't have that knot there, if I can twist it without. So if I was to tie that off on the bottom so that the knot is not showing, or you could even tape it, but what it does is it allows my flower to sit a little bit flatter. So if I was to go ahead and glue gun that on, it would sit nicely in the center. So I just love how you can so simply just move these elements together, trying different combinations, but I really do love the look of the brown paper with the burlap and the doilies. And of course doilies, you know, if you can pick up a package for a couple of dollars, and they often come in, you know, sets of 12 or 30, so you're getting a ton of them for your money. It's a really good bang for your buck, and they would look awesome on a black and white gift as well. You could do some really cool things. I'll probably do that in the future one time. But I think the things that I want to get across the most are, number one, the combination of the burlap with the lace is beautiful, but also just when you're adding your extra elements like your flowers and stuff, take a look at it and try it, because I really do find that sometimes when you get something too shiny, the actual texture and the finish of the materials that you use, sometimes I feel like it's important that they are connected in the sheen. So shiny doesn't always look great with flat. It does for some looks, but I think when you're going for something like this that's more of a natural, kind of a toned down look, I just don't feel that something shiny would look great. I know when I was actually trying out different combinations, even just this ribbon, I had tried this ribbon and it's got a little bit of a shinier sheen, a little bit silkier, and when I put it up with the other elements, I just didn't love it. And granted, the whites are a little bit off as well, but for me it was really more about the sheen and the actual look. So just be cautious of that when you're creating, that you're thinking about sheen and texture. This was another great example. This one is actually quite a lace looking ribbon that I had picked up at the dollar store, but again, it's a very pure white, and when you look closely at it, it has a bit more of a shine to it. It's not as flat looking, and I just really felt that the flat looked better. So just a couple things to watch for, but I encourage you when you're out and about, doilies are a great thing to look for when you're out thrift shopping. The paper ones look awesome as well, but I really like the cloth ones. You can do a little bit more with them. They're a bit more versatile because of course they're forgiving, whereas the paper ones can tear quite easily. So I hope you enjoy these doily and burlap ideas, and we'll incorporate them into some of your gift wrapping. Thanks for visiting Bohemian Rhapsody. I hope you have a great day and that you'll come back and visit for more great gift wrapping tutorials. Thank you.